Okay, what's up, YouTube? It's James Haupt. We're bringing the James Haupt Show back. I know I've been on a hiatus from episodes, but well, that's my fault. I've been working more hours and being lazy about this, so here we are. It's 11 p.m. and I got some time, so let's do it. I've been thinking a lot about personal responsibility and accountability in life, but I've also been thinking about the influence of experience and environment on outcomes and on behavior. And I've been reflecting upon how my own experiences and environments have influenced my own decision making and how it led me to run away from said personal responsibility. And most people, I think, if you ask most people that know me, they would probably say that I'm a fairly responsible person. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've been the type that, everything I owe, I always pay. I always work hard to get the money to take care of my needs. When I was growing up, my parents divorced. I had to watch over my sisters sometimes and things like that. But speaking of the divorce, what led me to start thinking about this is I've been watching a lot of like red pill and MGTOW stuff, and I've been seeing all these videos and interviews with all these women who don't really want to hold themselves accountable to their own lives. But I have also realized that it's not like a lot of these women on these shows and interviews, they can come off as like selfish and like delusional and stuff. But I realized after literally watching hundreds of these different red pill shows out here on YouTube and seeing so many of these women say so many of the same things, and realizing that so many women I've known in my life, including members of my own family, have also had similar views. I've realized that, yeah, we're all responsible to hold ourselves accountable to our own health, wealth, and happiness. I believe that. I'm responsible for my own health, wealth, and happiness, and everyone else is to theirs. However, we've grown up in this society, in this culture, in this world that sends us a lot of mixed messages. We've all been brainwashed to a certain extent. And I think a lot of it, people want to blame like feminism, people want to blame like a lot of this modern stuff that's going on now, but I kind of want to blame advertisers, man. I kind of want to blame the salesmen. I want to blame let me take this back a little bit. So one thing I've realized by seeing all this content, watching all these interviews, is the effects of, I'll just refer to it as Disney fantasy. Not that it all comes from Disney, but this is the best way to sum it up. Like a lot of these worldviews that these women have, and even that some of the things I've had in my own mind and things men can have, is it comes from fantasy. It comes from fiction. We get these ideas about life like, thinking you can go through your 20s just carefree and it's not going to have an effect on your lifetime. Thinking that you're just going to live your life and things are going to happen and work out on their own. Thinking that, it's okay to not worry about your responsibilities and stuff, and you can put it off and all that. Like, just delusions like... And a lot of it comes from fantasy. I'll use all these red pills as an example because it's the easiest to explain. You see a lot of these women talking about how, You know, they want these superior type of men. They want these high value, high quality men. And basically, like, they want a Prince Charming to swoop in and save them from the troubles of life. And I think that that's a Disney belief. That comes from childhood, you know, several generations now of children growing up watching cartoons and movies and being raised by TVs and now screens, and they're just being fed all of this nonsense, and it influences how they see the world. You know, when I was young, when I was like a kid, when I was still in school, I remember every like report, all kinds of reports throughout school and stuff I had to write. If you had to choose a subject to talk about, I would always choose the subject of video games and violence, and whether or not video games influence kids to behave more aggressively or more antisocially. And my perspective was, and of course I was always playing games all the time as a kid, so of course I chose the side of no, games aren't causing any harm whatsoever. And I mean, there's an argument for that, I mean, to this day. But I'm trying to remember the guy's name who was... There was an attorney when I was a kid, Jack... I'm not going to remember his name right now, but there was a very prominent attorney who's basically, he made his whole career about campaigning against video games, and he was saying how, you know, this causes the kids to be more violent and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, growing up, you know, my parents would always be like, yeah, that stuff's not real. You know, it's not real. It's not fake. And, you know, I understood that. I was like, yeah, I know this shit's not real. I know I'm not going to go out in real life and just start blasting aliens or Nazis or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, whatever was in the games. It was a lot of World War II games and a lot of, when I was growing up, stuff like that. So, but I mean, I knew that wasn't real. I knew you couldn't just go out in the real world and do these things. But, I didn't realize the actual subtle influences that media have until now that I'm an adult. Because one thing that video games do have an influence, and I'm not sure, I don't think that gender really matters on this. I think it could be boys and girls, but the video game puts you in a role of control and power. In the game, most of the times, maybe you can make your own character. Maybe you're playing as a pre-created character. Or maybe you're just in charge of something if it's like a strategy game. But either way, it puts you in the central, powerful role. Like, you're in control of everything. You're at the center of the world of what this game is doing. So, subconsciously, it's like you have all these experiences in these games. And it makes you feel on some level like you've accomplished something, or like you're important, or like you're special, because you're playing through the character, and the character in the game world is important. The character is special. The character has a purpose. The character has a role. Most of the times, you're the hero. You have to save the world, you know, or you're going out there and you're conquering the evil in the world, and you're gaining the spoils from that. You know, take like Skyrim, for instance. You know, Skyrim was a hugely popular game when I was younger, a game that I've played hundreds of hours of. And the whole idea of this game is that your character is the Dragonborn. Your character is this special person that has these abilities and powers that nobody else has. And because of that, you have a central role in the plot. You have a central role in saving the world from dragons. You're special. You know, and you can basically go around and do whatever the hell you want. And you go around and you collect tons of gold and tons of loot that you sell. And then you're rich and you get houses, and you have all these houses around the map, and all this money and all these cool weapons and armors and spells. And, you know, it just makes you feel like you're somebody. And you invest so many hours into this that I guess my point is that maybe games don't necessarily make you violent, but it does subconsciously influence you to start seeing the world from the shoes of the hero. And the problem with that is that most of us ain't the hero. Most of us are not the hero. I'm not the hero, and most of us aren't the hero. Okay, and I say that so many times because it's important. Because I played hundreds, thousands of video games where I'm the hero, I'm the special chosen one to save the world and get all the gold and all this. And that just gets into your head and you start feeling like you're special and you start feeling like you've actually accomplished something. And so when you get out in the real world and you find out things are hard and you got to work really hard to get honestly very little for a long time, you just feel kind of jaded towards that because in some strange way it's like you think you've already passed this certain level in your life just because you had all these virtual experiences. And I never consciously recognized that in myself. But why I would feel like I should be entitled to certain things or I should get certain things other people do. And at this point in my life, obviously I've gotten over that because life has handed me enough shit sandwiches that it's like, okay, I get it. I'm just a regular dude. You know. Anyway, but the point being that this media, these things that we spend so much time consuming, it does have an influence on the way you see the world. Or at least it did have an influence on the way I see the world. I should, I guess, just speak for myself. And I don't know that it necessarily would lead me to be like lazy to things necessarily. Like I always, was raised to work hard and all that stuff. But it would just be like, I don't know, you think that you're doing all this stuff and you see other people getting more to you and then you feel like, oh man, well I'm the one that should be, you start to be envious or jealous or you just start to think like, why don't I have all these things? And it's like, well, why should I even have that sense of entitlement in my mind that I should have anything? I personally, I don't ever use the word deserve. I've always believed that is a bad word. Deserve is just an evil, disgusting word. I don't believe anybody deserves anything. Okay? In this life, you keep what you earn and you reap what you sow. You don't deserve a damn thing. And that's what how I've always felt. But I've felt that, on the forefront consciously and then subconsciously, I always had all this strange entitlement, thinking I could skip steps in life or thinking I should already be able to get certain things that I'm not qualified for. And I think that's where a lot of that came from, is just video games. Always being in this virtual role of being the hero who, yeah, it's like the hero has to go through trials and tribulations, but it's not like it's really that hard. You just move some sticks and press some buttons, and there's a lot of pretty colors and flashy lights and cool sounds. So, I mean, you're excited the whole time, and, it's just easy. And life is not like that. And when I extrapolate that out and realize I came up my whole life playing all these games, so did most of the other kids. And not only the games, but the movies, the music, the TV shows. And what messages and signals are you getting out of all this stuff? That affects how you see the world. That affects how you make decisions. It's like you listen to a bunch of rap music where the rappers are always like, I'm the shit, whatever, I got all the money, I got all the bitches, like all this stuff. And that gets in your head too. And after a while, you're just like, you feel like you're somebody. You feel like you're something, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you realize, you look around in your life and you're like, well, wait a second. I feel like I'm king shit, but I'm sitting in here in a studio apartment, barely getting by, living paycheck to paycheck. What gives? Like, You know, I thought I was supposed to be somebody. And it's like, where did that idea even come from? What even made me think like I was supposed to be somebody? Like, what kind of entitled outlook on the world is that? Like, to be somebody, you have to do something. Ugh. And I realized recently, I was like, man, it's not just all these crazy women on these videos, but it's men too. It's all of us. We've all got just weird stuff subconsciously in our heads, like, that we don't even realize are there. Because, you know, it took me a long time to develop a proper emotional intelligence. It took me longer than I'd like to admit. To develop an understanding of like what feelings I'm having and where they come from, and how relevant, if at all, they are to my actual situation. And you know, that's emotional intelligence. And also, emotional intelligence could be seen from more of an empathetic view, like your ability to interpret and respond to other people's emotions. But for me personally, it was just about learning about what was going on in my own mind. And, you know, I realized that everything that I have in this life is what I've earned for myself. And if I don't have it, it's because I haven't earned it. And all these feelings of, oh, I should have this, or why don't I have this, or just, you know, thinking, oh, yeah, I'm, you know, doing so great. You know, I'm so cool. I'm this, I'm that. But meanwhile, like, you're eating ramen noodles and frozen pizzas. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't add up. And when I realize these things in myself, I'm just like, man, you know, I like to think that I see things pretty objectively. And I like to think I'm pretty introspective and honest with myself. And I try to avoid these pitfalls. And it's still in my brain, and it just made me realize, like, dude, it's obvious why there's so many dudes who are out here in bad situations, so many women out here in bad situations. It's all, everyone, and it comes from the culture. It comes from the society. It comes from media, you know. And I don't think all of it is necessarily bad. Like, in particular, I think movies used to actually try to instill positive values in people. Like, movies. A lot of movies used to always try to have like a moral, like an underlying theme or message of, like, you watch a main character develop from being a nobody to being a somebody by going through trials and tribulations and realizing things along the way, and standing up to adversity, and even sometimes not even winning, but still just keep coming back. It's like Rocky is like the perfect example of that. But at some point, the movies kind of stopped being that way, and the shows stopped being that way, and it just became about super special people that can do super special stuff and, you know, conquer everything with ease. And the problem with that is that I think as individuals, when we're watching this stuff, we're trying to identify with the main characters. We're trying to identify with the protagonists. We're not trying to identify with, maybe some people want to identify with the villains, and, you know, it is what it is. But here's the truth. I'll talk about Skyrim again, or we could talk about, you know, yeah, let's talk about Skyrim. The vast majority of characters in that game are peasants. Okay, most people are peasants. All right, there's people who are soldiers, there's people who are this and that, mercenaries, pirates, whatever the hell. But I mean, come on, there's still nothing special. You know, they might have chosen a more hostile path in the world in that game, but they're still a peasant. You know, they're not a jarl. You know what I mean? They don't live in a castle. And you just have to think about that in real life. Most of us are peasants. Okay? We're not the hero. Hell, most of us ain't even the blacksmith. Most of us ain't even the shop owner that the hero goes to buy things from. You know, so... And that's the reality. And if you can't see it like that, you can't realize, like, where you're at and how to move forward. If you can't be honest with yourself about who you are and where you're at in life, like, you know, I'm a peasant, all right? I'm out here struggling like anybody else. And it's like, to realize that and be honest and say, okay, well, what are the legitimate steps forward? That's how you have to approach it as an adult. And I really think that there's a reason that people are so... Like, childhood is just so drawn out and delayed anymore in people. You hear so many stories about how people live with their parents and into their 20s, well into their 20s, and that's become pretty common. I mean, it's not uncommon to know people in their late 20s, early 30s who live with their parents or something like that. And just to wonder, like, you know, when you start realizing this, you realize, like, well, we all grew up in this world where the media was showing us examples of all these extraordinary, like, individuals doing incredible things, and we're identified with that, and in some way, you start to think that you're an individual doing incredible things, even if you ain't doing nothing. Like, and especially with the rise of, like, social media and everybody putting the best version of themselves out there constantly in a public way online, like, I mean, I don't know, people start to come up with these personas and identities and present themselves a certain way, and meanwhile, it's like, bro, you work at McDonald's, like, you know, like, you deliver food, like, what do you, you know, you're out here trying to think you're the Dragonborn. Man, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. You know, it doesn't make me special that I played the hero in all those video games, and it doesn't make me special that I identified with the heroes of movies and TV shows and whatnot, you know. And that's not real life either. And also, I think not only does it give you a sense of entitlement subconsciously that you don't recognize, but it gives you a unrealistic expectation of what life is and what it's going to be. Because if you think about it, in a video game, most of the time, it's action. Most of the time, you know, excitement is happening and it's a rush and you know it's going down. Like, you're out here adventuring, you're out here exploring uncharted locations on the map and fighting evil and conquering all these creatures and bandits and whatnot. And, you know, in movies, constantly something is happening all the time. And not only that, but it gives you this unrealistic expectation subconsciously, like life is going to be super exciting and action all the time, and that ain't the case. And not only that, but it gives you this strange expectation of time frames, and like so many events happen so fast in a video game or in a movie or a TV show, regardless of how much of a time frame it represents, it has to be presented in a condensed way. It has to be presented in an hour. It has to be presented in, you know, 20 to 40 hours of gameplay or what have you. Like, and most of that is gameplay, and it's not the plot being developed, but it's still, you know, that's a work week. So it's like these entire adventures are taking place within the span of a nap to a work week. And it's like you accomplish all these things and do all this stuff in such a short amount. It really like gets, at least for me, I think it made me, in a way, without realizing it, think like in life, things were just going to come fast and easy and like progress quickly. And so at different points in my life where I've been like felt like I was stuck or spinning my wheels and got frustrated, I might even just quit what I'm doing and try to do something different. Because that's the other thing about, especially video games, there's so many games. If you ever get stuck on one game, you just pop in another and play that for a while. And it's like, do you see what I'm starting to say now? Like, do you see like how I'm just explaining like how all of these behavior patterns that you play out in the games or that you see in the movies, this influences subconsciously like what you're thinking, how you perceive the world. It can affect how you make decisions. And you can make bad decisions. You can be like, man, I'm sick of grinding through all these jobs for a few years. I'm going to try a different type of job. Meanwhile, it's like, bro, if you had just stuck with it a couple more years and found a better company, boom, your career would take off. But see, you don't think about it that way. Because in the games and the movies and the shows, everything happens so fast. It happens so fast and so naturally. Of course it did. It had a thing called writers. They came up with an outline. They came up with a plot. They came up with a story to make it that way. It's fake. Man. So I don't know, but I just had to record this and get this out here because I don't think it's as simple as to just basically to sum this all up. I don't think it's as simple as just to tell people that they have to just be responsible and accountable for their own life, because I think honestly, we all pretty much realize that by the time we're adults. By the time we're out here paying our own bills and all that, we pretty much all realize that. But the things that are holding us back could very well be our unrealistic expectations or our delusional perception of how life should happen based off of imaginary experiences. And that does come from video games. And that does come from movies. And that does come from TV shows. And it does come from music. And before I close this all out, I just want to say, people used to realize this. If you look historically at music in particular, it's been around the longest, so it's the easiest to see this. There was always an uproar when a new genre of music would come out. Rock and roll came out and people started getting into it, and the powers that be were like, hey, this is the devil's music, and this is going to cause violence and chaos to ensue because people are going to, try to imitate everything they're hearing in the music and all that. And it's like, most rational people are like, oh, that's silly, it's just music, it's only music. But meanwhile, music is literally one of the most subconsciously influencing things that there is. Like, I still remember a weather song from a Spanish class in high school to know words of the weather. That is impact. What things have as much impact to us as music that put messages in our brains that we remember? So I don't know if I can really sum it up any better than that. I don't know if there was really much more of a point to this, but I just was thinking about, responsibility and the influence of media on, my own perceived expectations of reality and how it was unrealistic, and how I made decisions based off those unrealistic expectations, and it turns out some of those decisions were mistakes. And I hope that, by illuminating that a little bit, for me personally, I'll recognize it more going forward and make better decisions based on reality. But also maybe someone else can, get the message and realize, oh man, here I thought I was the dragonborn the whole time, and I'm just a peasant. So anyway, I think that's all for this episode. Peace.